This is a story about when I finally found out what the tooth fairy has been doing with all my missing teeth. I hope you won't stop coming to visit now you're getting older. The bedside lamp cast Grandma in a sickly yellow glow. It made her look like she was wearing a Halloween mask. There was a smile on her face that didn't quite reach her eyes. The duvet covers rustled around me as Grandma shifted her weight on the bed. I frowned up at her. The last few times I'd been round to visit she'd made similar comments to this one. Remarks about feeling lonely, or not having enough people to talk to. Something was obviously on her mind. What? Of course I won't stop coming to visit, Grandma, I said. Why would you think that? Oh, I don't know. You worry about these things when you get to my age. Her smile widened for a moment, then faded. You worry people will forget about you. I haven't seen your brothers nearly as much since they started university, you know. I opened my mouth to respond to this, then closed it again. Grandma wasn't wrong. Dan and Rich were in different cities now, in their first and third years respectively. They definitely didn't see her as much. But then again, they didn't see any of us as much. I shifted in bed and propped myself up on one arm. Gave Grandma my best smile. Well, I promise I'll always come round to visit, anyway. Even in a few years, if I go to uni, I'll still come back. Grandma glanced from my face to the pillow beneath me, then back to my face again. She smiled, and this time I thought it looked genuine. Even when you run out of teeth, I always save my teeth for Grandma's. It's like a tradition. My brothers and I have been doing it since we were little. Even if we lose a tooth at home, we'll keep hold of it until we next visit her. Tuck the thing in our pocket, then slip it under the pillow in Grandma's spare room before bed. We never even have to tell her they're there, somehow she always seems to know. She always pays well, too. That's the main thing. I got £5 for my first few teeth, and that jumped up to £10 when I hit my teens. Recently, now that my brothers are away, and I'm the only one still at home, it's hit the £20 mark. Losing my milk teeth has been an uncomfortable, drawn-out process. It's been going on for ages. My brothers had all theirs out by 13, but I'm 15 now and I only just lost my last molar. Finally worked the thing loose during maths the other day. It was painful, but worth it. I slipped it straight into my wallet to keep it safe. It's sort of amazing, but even though I must have put about 20 teeth beneath the pillow at Grandma's house, I've never once seen her taking them. I've never caught her in the act. She must wait until I'm dead asleep every time, then tiptoe in without turning the light on. She must make hardly any noise at all. I go to sleep with the tooth underneath me, and wake to find the money. It's always the same. The only signs that anyone's been in the room at all, and this is another little tradition, are the messages in the ensuite bathroom. The words scrawled in lipstick on the mirror. Thank you for the tooth, they'll say. Spend the money wisely. Or, that tooth was just what I was looking for. Hope you enjoy your payment. I used to ask Grandma about the messages when I was younger, but she'd always feign confusion. Told me she didn't know anything about them. Said it had to be the tooth fairy. I woke to the sound of my door snicking shut. The room around me was a nest of black and gray shadows. I tried to blink the sleep out of my eyes, unsure for a moment where I was. Then I saw the familiar shape of the bedside table, and my clothes folded on the floor at its foot, and I remembered. I was at Grandma's house, sleeping in her spare room. And from the look of the thick shadows around me, it was the middle of the night. Still half asleep, I swung my legs out of bed and onto the carpet. Grabbed my phone from the bedside table and tapped the little torch icon. I was operating on autopilot at this point. I could feel the urge to pee in my bladder, and getting up to go to the toilet was all my sleep-fogged brain could think about. I climbed out of bed and padded along the carpet, over to the closed bedroom door. It was only when I gripped the handle that I suddenly remembered what had woken me. The noise. The soft click, which could only have been made by the door closing. The same door I currently had my hand on. Grandma. It had to be. The noise I'd heard must have been Grandma, sneaking out of my room after taking the tooth from under my pillow. Making a mental note to check for the money when I got back into bed, I twisted the handle. I opened the door as quietly as I could. I knew it was stupid, but there was a part of me that wanted to preserve the secrecy of Grandma's tradition. I'd heard her taking a tooth for the first time, but I didn't want her to know I'd heard her. For some reason I had the idea it might hurt her feelings. With this thought running through my sleep-muddled brain, I stepped through the bedroom door and out onto the landing. Then I paused. At the far end of the corridor, I saw the briefest blur of movement. A shifting among the shadows. This was followed by another soft clicking sound, similar to the one that had woken me before. It was the noise of another door shutting. Grandma again. Only if it was Grandma, why had she just gone through that door? The door at the far end of the landing, the one directly opposite where I now stood, didn't lead to her bedroom, or to the bathroom. It led to the airing cupboard. What was Grandma doing going into the airing cupboard at this time of night? For the first time since waking, I felt the faintest worm of unease in my stomach. There was no real reason for me to feel afraid, and it was only a vague feeling, but I still felt it. I felt confusion, too. But the main thing I felt was curiosity. Holding out my phone in front of me, I made my way slowly along the landing. The tiny torch carved a path through the darkness. Shadows fled the light. I tried to tread as carefully as possible, but the wooden floorboards beneath me creaked softly with each step I took. The noise made me wince. The creaks weren't loud, but in the silence of Grandma's house they sounded loud. I passed the top of the staircase on my right, then the bathroom on the left. I didn't even glance at it. I still needed to pee, but the urge was no longer at the front of my mind. A moment after passing the bathroom, I reached the closed door of Grandma's bedroom. I paused there for a moment and listened, but there was no sound beyond it. "Of course there's no sound," whispered a voice in my mind. "Grandma's not in her room, is she? You just heard her go into the airing cupboard." I kept walking. The closer I got to the door at the far end of the landing, the more careful I became. I slowed down, trying to make every footstep as quiet as I could. By the time the light from my phone was spilling over the airing cupboard's closed door, I could feel my own heartbeat banging in my chest. I stood still in front of the door and pictured the cupboard beyond it. I'd only been in there once or twice, but it wasn't hard to remember. The airing cupboard was a small space mostly taken up by the boiler, a large, metal cylinder that hangs in the humid darkness like a spaceship. A few shelves on the left are home to towels and spare sheets, and a few cleaning products line the floor below. That's it. There's barely even enough room in there for a person. I hesitated in the darkness of the landing, feeling another prickle of fear and confusion. What could Grandma be doing in there? The house around me was completely silent. I strained my ears for the sound of movement beyond the door, but the only thing I could hear was my own heartbeat. Or at least, that was all I could hear at first. After a moment, my ears began to pick up another sound, too. It was impossibly faint, but it was there. A soft, gentle rustle, nearly lost beneath the thumping in my chest, coming from the far side of the airing cupboard's door. The fear in my stomach was threatening to get worse, and I made a decision right then, on the spur of the moment, that I'd stop it before it had the chance. This was getting ridiculous now. I knew I was only spooking myself, and that there wasn't really anything to be afraid of. I was only being stupid. Before I could think about it anymore, I reached out and yanked the door open. The first thing that hit me was the smell. The rank odor that poured from the cupboard in a thick wave. I wrinkled my nose, almost taking a step back. It smelled like bad breath. That was my first thought. It smelled like the whiff of a person standing too close to you before they've brushed their teeth. The stink of dried drool on your chin when you wake up in the morning. It was like that, only stronger. Much stronger. The stench hit me in a wall, and I screwed my face up against it. But my disgust only lasted for a moment. The smell only held my attention for the briefest second, before the sight of what was inside the cupboard shoved it from my mind. The cupboard's interior was almost exactly as I'd remembered it. There were shelves on the left containing rows of towels. White bed sheets in neat stacks. The light from my phone bounced off them and made them glow. The boiler glinted to their right, its metal bulk shining silver in the shadows. There was no sign of Grandma anywhere. That was the first thought that shot through my head. The small cupboard was empty. I'd seen the door close when I came out of the bedroom. I knew I had, and I could have sworn I'd heard a rustling noise coming from inside a moment before. But there was nobody here. As these thoughts were going through my mind, I continued to sweep the light from my phone over the cupboard's interior. I shone it down at the floor, where it picked out bottles of bleach in a dustpan and brush, then traced it up the length of the boiler's metal body. It was as the light reached the boiler's upper edge that I felt dread punch through my stomach like a fist. There was a skull in the cupboard. A human skull. It grinned back at me from the shadowy recesses behind the boiler, off-white bone glinting in the light from my phone. Terror rocked through me in a wave. If I'd had more breath in my lungs, I'd have screamed. Maybe I'd have run, but instead I only stood there frozen, staring dumbly at the horror picked out in the cupboard's shadows. It took me a moment to realize what was wrong with it. What was wrong with the thing lurking behind the boiler? Although the light from my phone was weak, it was strong enough to illuminate the skull's surface. It was strong enough to outline the shape of an open mouth, and 2 gaping sockets. And it was also strong enough to show the many cracks running through the thing's surface. Or at least, what looked like cracks. As my eyes adjusted and the worst of my shock faded, I saw they weren't really cracks at all. They were edges. They were the edges of hundreds and hundreds of teeth, which had been slotted together to form the shape of a skull like some nightmare jigsaw puzzle. The sight of it made me feel ill. My scalp itched. For a moment I was reminded of an X-ray image I'd been shown once in school, of a child's skull before the big teeth have pushed through the gums. Clustered molars packed tight in the bone. The X-ray had made me feel sick then, and the memory made me feel worse now. As the light from my phone shuddered over the disgusting shape in the cupboard, a stray thought flashed madly across my mind. Well, I guess this explains the smell. Then I saw movement in the skull's right eye socket and stumbled back a step. Terror surged through me again, even worse than before. Somehow I kept the phone raised in front of me, but my hand shook so badly the light bounced everywhere. It jutted from the boiler back to the skull, then once more over the black eye socket, where it picked out 2 tiny, glinting lights within. I pulled in a sharp breath. There were eyes within the eye. That's what I was looking at. A face within the face. Something moved in the shadows, inching forwards into the light cast by my phone. I caught a glimpse of glistening, needle-thin teeth and a pair of rustling, membranous wings. The insect-like body of a creature peering out at me from the gaping, dead socket. Then my paralysis broke and I ran. I wanted to tell myself it was only a dream. When I woke this morning in Grandma's spare room, light spilling in around the curtains, it even seemed possible that maybe it had just been a nightmare. The entire trip to the airing cupboard, the grim discovery I'd made in the shadows there, all of it. But then I heard a rustling noise below my pillow as I shifted my weight in bed. I reached below it and felt a note there. Notes, actually. When I pulled my hand out, I was clutching a crisp wad of 20s. That was when the worm of fear curled awake in my stomach again. When I felt the first whispers of dread, creeping back in. That dread only got worse when I forced myself to get up out of bed. When I padded into the ensuite bathroom and flicked on the light switch. Grandma always left me such sweet messages. Her neat, slanted handwriting is always easy to spot, even when she's writing in lipstick. The message I found on the bathroom mirror this morning was in lipstick, but it wasn't Grandma's writing. It was scrawled in huge, ugly red capitals that took up the mirror's entire surface. Reading it, I felt myself grow cold. She won't be lonely anymore. She has a new grandchild now. Subscribe and please like. Thanks for tuning in and listening.